There are numerous pressures on carers that can lead to a whole range of different emotional responses. And sometimes these are positive, and sometimes these are negative. And in fact, sometimes it's a whole kind of roller coaster of emotions, and that can be quite difficult and complex to deal with, kind of positive and the negative emotions and how that can vary day by day. So some people talk about positive responses to their role as a carer, and that might be that they've grown as a person, that they've learned to appreciate what really matters in life, and they've learned to become more tolerant or patient, or they've just grown greater awareness of things, how life is. But there are also some negative pressures on carers more broadly. And these can include feeling very anxious, feeling stressed or worried. People can also feel quite angry and frustrated with the system around them, feeling isolated, lack of support. People can also be depressed. There is a higher rate of depression, certainly amongst parent carers, which was my topic of my doctoral research, and a sense of loss, and people might talk about chronic sorrow. And there can also be a feeling of helplessness. It's a feeling like it's really difficult to know what to do, where to go for support, and feeling just like you're really not sure what to do and uncertain. And there can also be trauma. A lot of parent carers have been through traumatic experiences, and then that may continue to be re-triggered with traumatic experiences in terms of hospital visits, invasive medical procedures. These kind of things can continue to re-trigger trauma. And what was interesting in my research that came up a lot, and then I've read about it more widely as well, is this feeling of guilt. A lot of carers feel guilty for a whole range of reasons. And I think it's really important that we talk about this and we raise awareness of this. So guilt is feeling bad about something that you might have done or not done. And I think it's really important that guilt on its own isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can be really appropriate. It can be really important. It's an important part of child development that you learn to do socially appropriate things, because when you've done something wrong, you feel guilty, and then you make amends to try and improve what you've done, or make things better. So guilt in itself isn't necessarily the problem when it's appropriate. I think what often happens with carers or people that take on too much responsibility, there's an inappropriate guilt, and you start to feel guilty about everything, things that are beyond your control. They're not your responsibility. And I think sometimes for carers, they may feel guilty that they can't fix a problem, that they can't get the support that they need as a family, or that the person they care for needs. There may be a guilt that at times they feel frustrated in their caring role, or they may feel angry and then they feel guilty about feeling angry. So this is when guilt becomes inappropriate, what we'd call maladaptive. It's not adaptive, it's not helpful, and it's misplaced. So carers will take on too much responsibility that really isn't their responsibility. We can't solve all the problems of the world. The system, unfortunately, is broken in parts, and that's not our fault, but we may feel guilty for that. And I think sometimes carers take on what I call a kind of carer identity, where it becomes absolutely everything of who they are. Is I am a carer and this is my whole world. And it's important that it's not your whole world. You don't have to make caring everything about who you are. You're entitled to other interests and meeting other people and doing things that you like for you. And that's okay. And to take that without guilt. So identifying this and noticing what's our responsibility and what isn't is quite key in looking after ourselves as carers. Because we are human, and it's a human need to have our own sense of purpose and things that we do, and connecting with other people outside of a caring role. There's a pediatrician called Donald Winnicott who talked about good enough parenting. And I think that we can use that same concept with carers. We can be good enough. So that means we will make mistakes. We won't always get it right, But that's fine. That's human, and that's okay. That's enough. So good enough is good enough. And it's hard to acknowledge that sometimes, despite our best efforts, we can't protect our loved ones from difficulties. This pressure on the caring role that kind of can grow and become unmanageable. And sometimes just a human connection with someone, how are you, is really, really important. But just reminding a carer that they're, a human being and with their own needs. And I think what can be helpful for carers is knowing that lots of carers feel guilty. You're not alone. You're certainly not the only person to feel that. And sometimes that connection with others and knowing that this is something that a lot of people experience can be really helpful for realizing that you're not alone and you're not the only one. And I think it's really important to talk about it as well and raise awareness of it. And so it's so important that Carers Wales have raised this issue and to make people aware that carers' guilt really is a thing, but there are things that you can do to help lessen it as well. So in practical terms, I would suggest, firstly, you name it, you recognize it, you take a moment to just pause and notice how you're feeling. This awareness of how we are feeling, awareness of our emotions is really key. And then I think there are strategies you can use in the way that you talk to yourself. If you notice that you tend to be quite self-critical, you can perhaps challenge that and think about how you would talk to a close friend and using that same kind of attitude of kindness and self-compassion with yourself, and challenging unrealistic expectations that you may put on yourself. Our assertiveness to say when something isn't good enough or to say no to something. So asserting our right to protect our time, protect our, when we're feeling overloaded, and to be assertive in the face of things that maybe are overwhelming or unacceptable. So self-compassion is a bit different from self-esteem, which is how we kind of feel about ourselves. Self-compassion is really about how we will talk to ourselves and how we treat ourselves. So if you know that you tend to have a rather self-critical voice, if you do something and then you feel a bit uncomfortable about what you've done, a self-critical voice would be, oh, there you go, you've messed it up again. Whereas a self-compassionate voice would be, oh, that wasn't quite what you meant, but now you're clear about what you want to say next time, or something like that. Just being kind, really, in the same way that you'd be compassionate to others. And we can really develop that self-compassionate voice and approach that we have with ourselves. And then there's a whole range of strategies. I talk about having a Swiss Army knife of self-care activities that you can use at different times. So it might be connecting with friends, going out for a coffee, doing something different. And the benefits of exercise, being out in nature, relaxation techniques, mindfulness. So there's a whole range of things that people can engage in. And what will work for you will be personal for you. So it's worth trying different things and seeing what fits into your life, but making sure that you take that time to do these activities, again, without guilt. It's not a luxury add-on, it's a vital part of your everyday life.